So I need you to listen to me today. Your resentments are like gasoline on an already blazing fire of sexual addiction. Hello again, friend, and welcome back to Sex Addicted Christian. We're here to crush the shame, cultivate community, uncover the unseen, and take action. I'm your guide, as always, every week, Jimmy Trent, and it's such a pleasure to be with you guys today. In today's episode, I want to talk to you about resentments. I believe that resentments lead to your porn addiction more than you probably realized. There's an old proverb in the Alcoholics Anonymous book that says this: resentment is the number one offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. I don't know if that strikes true in your experience, and maybe you haven't done enough work observing your addiction and the intricacies of it to be able to identify with it. But I know in my experience, I tend to be tempted with pornography or lust or sexually addictive behavior when I am currently in conflict with others. So I need you to listen to me today. Your resentments are like gasoline on an already blazing fire of sexual addiction. Today has to be the day. You've got to start doing something different in your relationships now. So before we get any further into our discussion today on resentments, this topic falls under one of my 4 pillars: building community. And you'll find that in my guide, The 4 Pillars of a Porn-Free Life. It's a free gift from me to you. So if you haven't downloaded it, pause the video, just hop over to the website, sexaddictedchristian.com, and download The 4 Pillars of a Porn-Free Life as a free gift from me to you, that you'll be able to deal with the shame, community, uncovering the unseen, and taking action. So back to our topic, resentments leading to your porn addiction. You and I were built for community. We were built for relationships with others, and most supremely, relationship with God. When either of those relationships are strained, we find ourselves in some pretty tough places. And when those relationships are not right, we tend to run to our addiction to either escape the relationship or to medicate or deal with the feelings that we don't like in connection to that conflict. Ed Welch, as I've mentioned before in previous videos, has a really powerful quote connected to this. He says, for some, the addiction isn't really the primary problem. It is only a sinful way of dealing with poor relationships. He says it's a way of managing our relationships or lack of relationships apart from God. So you see what I'm saying here. There's a connection between bad relationships, your porn addiction, and avoiding God. It all works together in a way that serves or puts gasoline on this fire of porn addiction. He goes on to say that relationship problems can both cause addiction or result from our addictions. And when you develop skills in love and reconciliation, you are doing more to fight your addiction than you realize. So I want to jump right into the application for today's conversation. I want you to pursue those with whom you have resentments or those that you've offended. This, in fact, is Jesus' instruction to us in Matthew 5. He says there, so if you are offering your gift at the altar and remember that your brother has something against you, leave the gift here at the altar and go make reconciliation with your brother. That's a paraphrased version, of course, but the point in this is that we cannot both serve God while having conflict unresolved in our relationships. So the point in this is that we need God desperately to overcome our addiction to sex, porn, masturbation, lust, whatever form it takes. And when our relationships with others are in conflict, it blocks us. It keeps us from being able to have significant, intimate, and powerful relationship with God, whom we need His power to make this work. So a massive step that you can take right now to combat the addiction to pornography is to move towards the relationships in your life that are difficult, hard, challenging, and then we begin to find ourselves moving towards freedom. So how can you do this? Well, I want to continue looking at Matthew. Jesus is teaching in Matthew 7 when he talks about the log and the speck. You're probably familiar with at least the first verse in Matthew chapter 7, where he talks about judging not lest you be judged. But I want to move past that up to verse 3. Jesus says, "Why do you see the speck in your brother's eye and do not notice the log that is in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, 'Let me take the speck out of your eye,' when there is a log in your own eye?" Then he gets kind of confrontational and he says, "You hypocrite. First, remove the log from your own eye, then you'll see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye." If you find yourself in conflict with someone else, Jesus wants to first prioritize his work in you before we move towards others. Why is that good news? Well, because you're here. We're here to change. We're here to ask God to work in us. And so Jesus' teaching in Matthew chapter 7 prioritizes that work. You and I need to grow. And this conflict or these resentments that you have towards others is God's entry point or the doorway into your life so that he can work in you so that you can grow and in turn build your relationship with others. Jesus is wanting to prioritize your issues when you prefer to prioritize others' issues. Look, this doesn't mean that God isn't concerned about what others have done to you. He is just simply saying he desires to work on you first. And then, he says, you will see more clearly to help your brother. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to make a list of your resentments. Who in your life are you in conflict with? Who has hurt you? Who has done things to you that have made you upset? Write those resentments down. List the people and the issues. But before you go confronting them on what you feel they've done wrong, I want you to sit with each of those relationships and consider with God, what have I done to contribute to the conflict I have with this person? You're going to have to ask God to help you. You're going to have to pray and really humbly and honestly take a look at yourself. And then once you've been able to take an honest look at yourself, I want you to receive God's grace and his forgiveness for what you've done in your relationships to cause conflict. And once God's forgiveness and grace has rested on you, now you're ready to move towards those with whom you have conflict. So before we conclude today's discussion, I want to give you 3 tips on going to the other person. Of course, our assumption here is that first you've taken time to remove the log from your own eye. Now you're ready to remove the speck from your brother's eye. And the first thing I want you to do is to go humbly, seeking to own your part and seeking forgiveness from them for the logs that you've uncovered. Secondly, I want you to go peacemaking. I want your aim in this conversation to be about restoration and reconciliation of the relationship and not simply to win an argument. And thirdly and lastly, I want you to go boldly, seeking to help them own their part in the conflict in a loving conversational context. So as you consider moving towards others, 1, you are built for relationships and resolving your conflicts is important. 2, you got to get the log out of your own eye first, and then you can see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's. 3, I want you to go humbly, seeking forgiveness for your contribution to the conflict. 4, I want you to go peacemakingly, right, in order to seek restoration and not to win an argument. And lastly, I want you to go boldly. I want you to confront their issues in the context of a loving and restorative conversation. So in conclusion, friend, if this conversation is bringing to mind relational conflicts and resentments in your life, my encouragement to you is to take action today. Take action right now. Move towards reconciling those resentments. What one thing can you do right now to take action in this way? Your freedom from pornography depends on a right relationship with God and a right relationship with others. One way that you can do that is to download the 4 pillars of a porn-free life. It's going to help you deal with the shame of your porn addiction. It's going to teach you and help you to learn how to build significant and powerful relationships in your life through the building community section. And then thirdly, you're going to be able to work on uncovering the unseen things in your heart that lead you into this place. And lastly, building a plan to take action against your addiction and walk towards the freedom that God wants for you. I love you, friend. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks for being here. I want to serve you in any way that I can. So please, as always, email me, leave a comment, message me on one of the social media platforms, like these videos, leave comments for me, subscribe to the channel. All this helps us to move this conversation forward as we all together as a tribe together pursue freedom. We're going to walk into our freedom together as a team. I love you. I'm here for you. I'll see you next week.